Jesus Christ. Mister, you okay in there?
Welcome to Culture Screen, where we analyze culture. In this episode, we are summarizing the 7th episode from Season 5 of the Sopranos series titled In Camelot. The episode first aired on April 18th, 2004. In the beginning, we see Tony is having his sister Janice and Bobby over at his old mom's house as guests. Bobby's son ends up asking him for a puppy, and Tony shares that he had a dog once too, but he ended up getting worms and had to be sent to a farm. Janice corrects Tony and says that the puppy was actually gassed, and this form of animal cruelty deeply upsets Tony. After receiving a phone call, Tony receives news that his aunt Conchetta has passed away. When they go to the cemetery, Tony decides to walk over to his father's gravesite. At the gravesite, he bumps into his father's guma, Fran Felstein. She shares that she misses his father from time to time and is also sad to hear about him having lost his mom as well. Fran shares that Johnny Boy, Tony's father, always had good things to say about him and loved him very much. Tony is happy to hear that, of course. Fran also adds that his father always told her that if she ever needed anything, she should seek Tony. When Tony asks her what she needs, she says she doesn't actually need anything. Over the next couple of days, Tony learns much more about Fran. Uncle Junior confesses that he was actually once madly in love with Fran, but never had a chance once Johnny Boy began courting her. Eventually, Tony goes to visit Fran, and she tells Tony that when Johnny Boy passed away, he owned a racetrack, and part of the proceeds from the racetrack would go to Fran. When she contacted Hesh, he sent her a mere $500 and kept the share to himself. Tony is shocked by this and gets a bit upset. We then see Fran apologizes for having shared the story with Tony. They take a trip down to the racetrack, and at one point, they talk by a sign that reads, "The track is being sold." In the following scene, Tony goes to speak to Hesh about Fran, and Hesh says that he had to pay and deal with many other issues on his own, and this led him to give her such a small amount of money. Hesh further adds that what he gave her was a lot more than anyone else gave. As a result of this, Tony ends up having a sit-down meeting with Phil and Hesh about the total amount that will be paid to Tony for the sale of the racetrack. They meet with Johnny Sack, who decides that $150,000 will be paid to Tony. Of course, Phil is upset, but Tony demands his share. After Tony meets up with Fran again, she speaks to him about time she spent with John F. Kennedy. Fran ends up by reenacting the Happy Birthday, Mr. President routine originally done by Marilyn Monroe to Tony, and we see he finds it a bit cringy for his tastes. Following this scene, Tony confides in Dr. Melfi. He highlights how he never lived with one of his gumas, but his father did. He ends up blaming his mother yet again and sees the time he spent with Fran as a side effect from having Livia as his wife. Tony blames his mother yet again for his father's behavior. Dr. Melfi responds by telling Tony that his father was in fact allegedly a tough, powerful man, and that Tony should stop blaming his mother for everything negative that occurred in his family's past. As we catch up with Uncle Junior, we see his dementia is worsening. He is allowed to attend Aunt Conchetta's funeral by the courts, and he decides to find additional funerals to attend as a way of getting out of the house. He desperately searches the newspapers for anyone he may know or know in relation to someone else. Uncle Junior pushes his lawyer to get him permission to attend as many funerals as he can in order to stop him from going stir-crazy. Remember, I am summarizing the entire series, so subscribe and click on the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. I will be reviewing other TV shows, works of literature, and movies as well, so let me know what you would like me to summarize in the future in the comments section below. Also, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, support us on Patreon, and check out our store on Spring. Doing these things helps my channel out tremendously. After attending so many funerals, we see Uncle Junior feels alone. He never settled down with a woman, nor did he have any children of his own. Also, at his old age and having gone to so many funerals, he finally feels the weight of his decisions to remain single all these years. In another scene, we see Christopher at an AA meeting. Here he is with his friend JT Dolan. Christopher gets the feeling that JT is using and lying about being sober. He seems too confident and is constantly oversharing and in a hurry to go somewhere else. These are all red flags for Chris. JT is eventually introduced to a high-stakes poker game. JT ends up losing a lot of money in the game and ends up asking Christopher if he can loan him some additional money. JT also goes on to lose a sports bet and ends up owing thousands of dollars to Christopher. After JT misses a couple of his scheduled payments to Chris ends up paying him a visit to show him that he means business. Chris eventually ends up taking JT's sports car as a down payment on his loan. As we catch up with Tony again, he comes to the realization that part of the reason why Olivia was so hurtful to him as a child and as a man was because she herself was deeply hurt by her husband. Johnny Boy's betrayal truly destroyed Livia and caused their relationship to spiral. Tony remembers during a session with Dr. Melfi that Livia once had a miscarriage and his father was not around. Instead, he was with Fran, and Livia knew it. Tony remembers that when Johnny arrived at the hospital, he refused to admit what he was doing while she was in the hospital, and how he ended up using Tony as an alibi by claiming that he picked him up from school and went to a Yankee game. Because Tony backed up his father in lying to his mother, this also pushed Livia toward holding a grudge against both Johnny and Tony. We see Tony's dog Tippy is given away to Fran, who gives the dog to her son. The dog in this episode is a symbolic representation of Tony's neglectful childhood. We also see how the relationship Tony had to his parents was affected by Johnny Boy's extramarital affairs. Tony is also finally able to connect his father's behavior and how it hurt and destroyed his mother. Rather than seeing his mother as the villain, he finally sees her as a victim. We see how, just like Tippy, Tony was pushed to the side as his parents sought whatever was in their own best interest, and how children are always the ones affected the most by the behaviors of their parents. That was episode number 59, titled In Camelot. To watch the next or previous episode summary, click on the link in the description or at the end of this video. Also, consider supporting us on Patreon, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. See you on the next one.
Billy, he's a boss.
Jersey, come on, huh?
We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.